Good morning, everybody. How's everybody today? We're doing well. I saw that we have a couple of returnees, correct? People who have come back. Welcome back to those who've just come back. So I am Kathy Miller. I am your Sexual Assault Response Coordinator here at Mountain Home Air Force Base. Miss Nikki Falk is my SAPR VA. She's not able to be with us here today. Just a little bit about myself. I am a retired Senior Master Sergeant. I spent 28 years in the Air Force as a bomb loader, the last 10 of it here at Mountain Home Air Force Base. After retiring, I tried a little bit of work in the civilian sector. I did some substitute teaching. I love to teach. Found out very quickly that was not my niche. After 28 years in the Air Force working with weapons, found out they don't like it if you curse in the hallways. So I decided to come back into the Air Force Civil Service, mainly because I missed my Air Force family. Came back in 2013. I was hired on full-time as the SAPR VA, and then in 2016 I was hired on as the SARC. I started with the SAPR program in 2006 as a volunteer victim advocate, so I know just a little bit about the program. And one thing I know is that almost everyone in here already feels like they've been SAPR'd out. So when they knew they were getting a SAPR briefing, they were probably a little bit hesitant. Even our brand new airmen who are coming here straight from tech school have had, on average, 6 SAPR briefings between basic training and the finishing of tech school, depending upon the length of their tech school. So I know even they feel like they've had every SAPR briefing available. Having been with the SAPR program as long as I have, I actually do know what type of briefings you've gotten, what kind of information you've gotten. So I've actually developed a briefing that is completely different. New information that you haven't gotten, because I'm the type of person who likes to educate people. Before I head on though, I want to tell you a little bit about Nikki since she can't be here. Nikki is also retired. She retired as a Master Sergeant after 24 years in the Air Force. She was a jet engine mechanic and then she became a First Sergeant. So our office is a little bit unique. I am pretty sure that throughout ACC, we are the only SAPR office that has 2 retired maintainers in it. And I'm pretty sure Air Force-wide, we are pretty close to the only SAPR office that has 2 retired maintainers in it. So we really understand the climate out there. So I'm really happy to have her. She's fantastic. So hopefully you'll get a chance to meet her. Going back to what I wanted to discuss. We are really good at telling you the difference between the different types of reports. We're really good at telling you what services are available. But I think the one thing we haven't told you is what is it like to make a report of sexual assault? All right? Before I move on, I see that we have a couple of civilians in the audience. So I want to verify. How much do you know about our program? Do you know the difference between a restricted report and an unrestricted report? Sir? No? Okay. So the reason why I ask that question is because sometimes people don't know. Our civilians in the audience could be civilian employees, could also be family members, dependents. They are both in the Air Force eligible for restricted and unrestricted reporting. The easiest way to remember is restricted means we restrict who knows about the report, meaning that there is no investigation and command is not notified. Unrestricted reporting means that there is going to be an investigation, command is notified. Both of them have limitations as to services. For example, a restricted report, you cannot get a military protective order because command does not know about it, and you cannot get an expedited transfer because command has to approve one of those. So since we restrict who knows, not eligible. For an unrestricted report, if you start off with an unrestricted report, you cannot change back to a restricted report. Once that cat's out of the bag, we can't put it back in. So once people know that there's a sexual assault, we can't limit who knows. So that's the basic differences. And I like our civilian counterparts to know this because, like I said, in the Air Force only, DoD civilians are eligible for both reporting options, and throughout the services, military dependents are eligible for our services. As long as they are over the age of 18, we do not deal with children. That is family advocacy. So, moving forward, what I want to do today is walk you through somebody making a report of sexual assault. So with that said, the information that I'm going to be talking about could trigger personal traumas. Not necessarily a sexual assault, but could trigger some type of personal trauma. If that happens, please don't hesitate to get up and take a break. For everybody else, if somebody gets up and takes a break, please don't assume that they're a victim of sexual assault. All right? Maybe they're just tired of hearing me talk and they need to get up and go outside for a little while. Or they need a restroom break. Let's not assume anything. As I walk through this scenario, I'm also going to do my best to stay gender neutral. And that's because we know that sexual assault happens to anybody. It can happen to men, it can happen to women. It is probably the most non-discriminatory crime out there because it doesn't matter about your age, it doesn't matter about your race, your religion, your gender, your sexual orientation, none of that matters. So I'm going to try to stay gender neutral. In addition, I'm going to use the term airman. The reason why I'm using the term airman is because it can happen to any rank structure. I'm using the big A airmen to include our airmen, our NCOs, our officers, and our civilian counterparts. So I'm just going to use that term. So I don't want anybody thinking that I'm picking on just younger airmen, because over the past year, I have ranks from airman basic all the way up to major make reports of sexual assault. So we know it can happen everywhere. I've had DOD civilians make sexual assault reports. I have had civilian dependents make sexual assault reports. So I'm going to use that big A. In addition, I'm going to use the term Smith and Jones for the airmen that I'm talking about. If there's a Smith or Jones in here, please know I'm not picking on you. I just like to use common names because I remember them better. And I'm never going to use Miller because I'm always in the room. So the Millers in the room, you're lucky. All right, so it's Monday morning. There's a knock at the door, and I look up and there's Airman Smith. I walk over. Good morning, Airman Smith. How are you doing? I'm not automatically going to assume that Airman Smith is there to make a report of sexual assault. Maybe Airman Smith wants to know what type of, what it's like to be a victim advocate. Maybe they want to know where they can get some of my good swag, which, by the way, if you go to the education building, 3rd floor, come on up, I'll give you some of it, all right? So, Airman Smith looks at me and says, well, Miss Miller, I went to a party Saturday night, and something horrible happened. I now know that Airman Smith probably wants to talk to me about something very confidential, very private, right? So I'm going to ask Airman Smith to take a seat. If you have the chance to come up to our offices, please do. You will realize that we have a very warm and comforting environment. All of our offices have a comfortable sitting area so that people can sit down and talk to us. None of the offices have clocks on the walls. And that's because our clients' time is important, not our time. We don't want them thinking that they have to rush through something. We want them to know that we are there for as long as they need us there. And we know that if there's a clock on the wall and a conversation goes long, subconsciously we tend to look at clocks. So we don't have any clocks on our walls. So I'm going to ask Airman Smith to take a seat. I'm also going to ask Airman Smith if I can shut the door. I don't want Airman Smith to feel like she is enclosed. He or she, sorry about that. I want Airman Smith to feel comfortable. If I close the door and Airman Smith was sexually assaulted in an enclosed area, it could re-trigger that trauma. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that Airman Smith is comfortable. I'm going to ask, would you like me to shut the door? My office door, or my office is at the very end of the hallway. I also have a chime in my office that tells me whenever somebody enters the hallway. So that way I can get up and look and see if somebody's coming in the direction of my office. And then if Airman Smith didn't want the door shut, I can re-ask, can I please shut the door, someone's coming this direction. I want Airman Smith to know that their conversation with me is confidential and private. And I'm going to restate that to them very often. I'm going to let them know that what they say to me inside that office stays with me and is not discussed outside that office. I will also tell them that if they do ask for a volunteer victim advocate, that conversation that the volunteer victim advocate has with them is privileged and confidential, but that the victim advocate may come to me to let me know what's going on so that they don't have to retell their story, especially if the victim advocate is deployed, or maybe the victim advocate's on emergency leave or on regular leave, and the airman wants to talk to somebody. They know that they can talk to me, that privileged communication goes back and forth between us. We are all credentialed, and because of that credentialing, we have that confidential communication. Once Airman Smith sits down, depending on whether they want the door shut, I'm going to go sit down in a location that is not real close to Airman Smith, but where I can be close enough that if they need something, I'm there for them, right? So it's probably going to be the same distance I am from Airman Angel here, probably about this far away. And I'm going to ask Airman Smith to tell me what they want to tell me. A lot of people think that if they come up to my office, they have to tell me the whole story. They don't. I don't need all the details of what happened. I just need to know that you need some help and that you want some support. I'm going to let them tell their story to me. I'm not going to interrupt them. I'm going to let them just talk. Right? Let them say what they need to say to me. When they're done, depending upon what they tell me, I'm going to look at talking about certain services first before I talk about other services. So one of the things we know is that this sexual assault happened on Saturday night, right? And this is Monday morning. So what do you think is one of the things I want to talk to Airman Smith about up front? A SAFE examination, a sexual assault forensic examination. That examination is where we collect evidence. That examination can be done under restricted or unrestricted terms. We can offer that service to them. I keep sexual assault forensic examination kits in my office so that if an airman is unsure as to whether or not they want to do that, I can walk them through what that examination entails. I remind them that they only have to do the part of the examination that they are comfortable with, that it is their choice. I explain to them that if it is a restricted kit, that there's a control number that goes on that kit, not their name. Their name goes on the paperwork, which is put in an envelope and is sealed up and put inside the kit. All of the evidence is put inside the kit. Every piece of evidence has a control number on it. I'm the only one on this base who can connect that control number to that restricted case. Then the kit is picked up by OSI and it's maintained for 20 years. That can make them nervous. What I remind them is that OSI cannot unseal that kit. It has to show up sealed to the labs. And that it only goes to the labs if they change the report from restricted to unrestricted. Once again, reiterating that their confidentiality and their privacy is the most important thing to us, right? If that was an unrestricted kit, then their name would be on the kit, and the kit would be picked up by OSI and would be sent directly to the labs for processing, all right? I'm also going to talk to them about a Special Victims Counsel. Special Victims Counsel is a lawyer who represents victims of sexual assault, not because they've done anything wrong, but because they have rights. Just as a defendant has a lawyer to protect their rights, the Air Force in 2013 started the Special Victims Counsel project, and it was so successful at victims getting to know what the legal process was, having that support of legal representation, that a lot of our clients went from restricted to unrestricted because they now understood what was going to happen. Okay, so they can have Special Victims Counsel whether it's a restricted or an unrestricted report. Our Special Victims Counsel here at Mountain Home Air Force Base is Cap McCoy, and his office is just down the hallway from mine. He represents not only adult victims of sexual assault, but child victims of sexual assault. He also works with family advocacy. So he's a pretty busy person. I think right now he has 34 cases, and a majority of his cases are child cases. He has cases that are not here at Mountain Home Air Force Base because of conflict of interest. If we have a case where there's multiple victims, each victim has to have a separate SVC, and so SVCs are actually tasked out from other bases as well. So he has, I think about a quarter of his cases are here at Mountain Home. The other 3/4 are somewhere else in the country. So I'm also going to talk to them about mental health. The services they can get at mental health. It's the services for both restricted and unrestricted reporting. I'm going to talk to them about different services that are available in the local area. Because what I know is there's at least 3 career fields on this base that will never reach out to mental health for help. And that is security forces, flyers, and air traffic controllers. Because they are pretty sure that if they go to mental health, they're not going to be able to do their job on a daily basis. So one of the services that I offer to everybody, not to just those 3 career fields, but I offer to everybody, is the Vet Center. The Vet Center is awesome because they specialize in military sexual trauma. They have support groups for military sexual trauma. And we've got, they will help out anybody who is in that family or in those services, right? So let's say somebody is a victim of sexual assault. Their significant other can also get mental health services through them. The good thing about the Vet Center is the fact that if you go to see the Vet Center, your medical records are not part of your active duty military records. They can be released to the VA for VA benefits in the future, but they are maintained there at the Vet Center, so that's one of the good things. That's one of the reasons why we offer the Vet Center. And they do other type of counseling as well, but they're great with military sexual trauma. So I'm going to talk to them about those type of services, right? I'm also going to ask them who knows about this sexual assault. Have you talked to anybody else about this sexual assault? The reason why that's important is because if they talk to a mandated reporter, it eliminates the opportunity for them to get a restricted report. Our mandated reporters are security forces, anybody in law enforcement, first sergeants, commanders, chiefs, supervisors in the direct chain of command are all mandated reporters. Now, medical personnel are mandated to report a sexual assault to my office and my office only, but the restricted reporting option is still available to them. So one piece of information I would like to pass on is there is a time when a supervisor is not a mandated reporter. And that's when they're a volunteer victim advocate. So in your units, most units have volunteer victim advocates. The only units that cannot have volunteer victim advocates is security forces and the JAG. They cannot have victim advocates, but even our hospital has victim advocates. So get to know who your victim advocates are in your duty locations, because if it turns out to be one of your supervisors, you can still talk to that individual and maintain a restricted report if something unfortunate happened. So it's good to have victim advocates within your units. Once I have gone over most of these services with Airman Smith, I'm going to ask Airman Smith, what would you like to do? Now, Airman Smith has not talked to a mandated reporter. Airman Smith, we know it happened within 72 hours, which is the prime time for collecting safe forensic examinations. Let's say Airman Smith says, you know, Ms. Miller, thank you for all the information, but I'm really not sure I want to make a report right now. Airman Smith does not have to make a report. That's another misconception, is that if they walk into my office, they have to make a decision about making a report. I am not mandated to tell anybody. As a matter of fact, if I do tell somebody, I can lose my job and I could be charged in a federal court for violating ethics. So I am not going to do anything. If Airman Smith chooses not to make a report, I am going to caution Airman Smith about the fact that if anybody else knows about this sexual assault and they report it to command or law enforcement, the restricted reporting option is gone. The restricted report must be in the system before a third party reports a sexual assault for them to maintain that restricted report. They still do not have to make a report. All right? So, let's say they walk out the door and they don't make a report, and I get a call from OSI. They say, hey, Miss Miller, Airman Jones stopped by our office today, said they were at a party Saturday night. They were looking for the restroom, opened up a door, and saw that Airman Smith was being raped. Airman Smith has now lost that option for restricted report. But I cannot say to OSI that Airman Smith has already been in my office. All I can say is thank you very much. Can you send me the pertinent information? OSI knows what information I need to know. And can you let me know when you're going to contact the victim and bring them in for questioning, because they will. And then I'll remind them, please ask them if they want to talk to a SARC, and please ask them if they want to talk to an SVC. Here's what I know about our OSI detachment here. They are very pro-victim rights. I have had them actually look at a victim who went to their offices, not to my offices, to report a sexual assault, and they looked at the victim and said, why don't you think about getting a special victims counsel before talking to us? I don't know of any other detachment that does that. But they really respect every gunfighter on this base, and so they're going to make sure that their rights are protected. All right? So OSI will definitely let me know if they do that. What do you think I'm going to do now? I'm going to reach out to Airman Smith. I'm going to let Airman Smith know that, hey, somebody reported your sexual assault. The restricted reporting option is no longer available. Do you want to come back into my office and talk about the way forward? Because right now we know that they didn't want it investigated. But now we have what's called an independent investigation. That's when a third party reports the sexual assault, not the victim themselves. It still goes in my system, but that victim had no choice in this matter. So we're going to talk to them about those services again. I'm going to talk to them especially about the Special Victims Counsel, because if they didn't want this investigated, they now have somebody who can legally help them not participate in the process. All right? So, but if Airman Smith did make a restricted report in the system before they left out, and OSI contacted me, I still don't tell OSI anything. I'm going to reach back out to Airman Smith and pretty much say the same thing. Only what we know is that restricted report stays restricted unless Airman Smith chooses to change it. It has to be their choice. It's all about giving them control and power back. So it has to be their choice. Now, it's still going to be investigated, and I'll actually have 2 reports in my system. I'll have the independent investigation in my system, and I'll have the restricted report in my system. And until Airman Smith chooses to change it to unrestricted, it stays restricted. Talk to him about the benefits of going unrestricted. Now that somebody has seen it and witnessed it, that is one of the biggest fears for our victims, is that they're not going to be believed. Because what we know about sexual assault is there's not usually a lot of witnesses. It's 2 people behind closed doors, and quite often there's alcohol involved. Sexual assault doesn't have witnesses, so people don't think they're going to be believed. So more often than not, they don't want it investigated. They just want to get some help. More often than not, a client will tell me, if I knew I was going to be believed, I'd go unrestricted. Another thing they'll tell me is if I knew they did this to somebody else, I might go unrestricted. And that comes into play because if Airman Smith chose a restricted report, there is another service that we offer to only restricted reported cases, is what's called CATCH. CATCH is a program where a victim of sexual assault making that restricted report will input only the subject's information and the perpetrator, or the subject's information and the case information, the specifics of their incident into the system. Their information, victim's information, never goes into CATCH. Never. What CATCH does is it actually is continually taking the information that is inputted and it is analyzing through other law enforcement agencies, OSI, CID, which is the Army version of OSI, NCIS, which is the Navy version of OSI, and local law enforcement CODIS. And it's constantly revolving, and it's comparing all these circumstances and all of the information that's in that. And if it gets what's called a match, then those cases that have matches against them, the SARCs are notified that there's a match for a case, We contact that victim, say there was a match to your case. A match could be the same name of the perpetrator. It could be the same circumstances in an incident. For example, we had a perpetrator on this base who committed 20 sexual assaults, had 20 victims, had the same MO every single time. Individuals were in FTAC, not seeking out FTAC, okay? This was his MO. He was seeking out people in FTAC. He would serve them alcohol. More often than not, they were underage, so he would use that against them. The same alcohol every single time was Captain Morgan's. Every single time was the same thing. He would get them drunk, he would sexually assault them. That was the same MO. If there was an MO like that and catches onto that, they're going to pick all that information out. Those SARCs will be notified. We contact our clients. Do you want to change your report from restricted to unrestricted? Still their choice. Doesn't change. If they say yes, then we notify law enforcement that an individual has changed their report from restricted to unrestricted. We do not tell law enforcement it is in connection to a match. We just tell them that it changed. Okay? If they say no, we don't do anything. Right? We don't change anything. We just leave it as it is. That information is maintained in catch for 10 years. The victim can opt into it at any point in time and can opt out of it, but their information is not removed because it could potentially match to another victim's information. So that's one of those things, it's catch. What we know is that serial perpetration happens and happens more often than we think. So that's what catch was built on, so that we can potentially catch serial perpetrators. All right, so let's say Airman Smith, at the beginning of this conversation, or at the end of the conversation, instead of making a restricted report, Airman Smith chose to make an unrestricted report. All right? With an unrestricted report, there's some other things I have to do. Restricted reporting, I don't tell anybody anything, right? Not going to happen. With unrestricted reporting, I do have to notify that, I have to notify the command, and I can only talk to commanders. So I would tell the victim's commander that they have an individual in their unit who was sexually assaulted. If the perpetrator is in the same unit, I'm going to recommend to the commander that they be separated. More often than not, I've asked the victim, do you want to be moved or would you like the other individual to be moved? Commanders typically take my advice on that. I also have to notify OSI. All this has to be done as soon as possible. When I notify OSI, I'm going to let them know that I have an individual who's making an unrestricted report of sexual assault. I will also let them know whether or not they've asked for an SVC. Because if they've asked for an SVC, OSI cannot talk to them. It's the same thing that if a defendant asks for a lawyer, all interviews have to stop. It's the same thing with this. So they cannot talk to them. If a safe kit was done, I will ask the victim if there's some information I can release to OSI. I have to have their permission to release any information. But keep in mind that when there's a sexual assault, there's at a minimum of 3 crime scenes where evidence can be collected. 1 is the victim, 2 is the alleged perpetrator, and 3 is the location. And if OSI can't talk to the victim, they're going to want to collect evidence from the other 2 locations, right? So I'll ask the victim, are you okay with me telling OSI who did this? What were they wearing? Where did it happen? Was a condom used? And do you know where the condom is? That is the only information I will ask. If they say no, I cannot release it. If they say yes, then I will tell OSI that so they can start their investigation somewhere else and collect evidence. Our job is to do whatever the victim would like us to do for them. Right? That is what we do on a daily basis. And everything we do is voluntary, and it is by the victim's choice. We don't ever do anything that is not going to be within what they want done. Another thing is, it doesn't matter whether it's a restricted report or an unrestricted report. I do have to let the wing commander know that our services are being utilized. So there is a report that I send up to wing commander. However, the only information that's released is for a restricted report. Did it happen within the last 30 days, more than 30 days before entering the military? Did it happen on or off base? Did it happen during daytime or nighttime hours? How many victims? How many perpetrators? What type of sexual assault, penetration or non-penetration? Can you identify somebody from that? Absolutely not. They don't even know if the victim is military or civilian, whether the perpetrator is military or civilian. As a matter of fact, they don't know if alcohol or drugs was used. The only difference between the restricted and the unrestricted 24-hour notification I do is that the additional information for restricted or unrestricted is what is the status of the victim, what is the status of the perpetrator, and whether or not alcohol or drugs was used. Still cannot identify the person, but the wing commander needs to know our services are being utilized. All right? At the end of the conversation, I remind the client that it doesn't matter that we believe what they are saying to us, that we are going to provide them services, and everything is voluntary, and they can use whatever services they would like to. They don't have to use any of them, they can use some of them. We remind them that all that conversation is privileged. All right? There is one thing that has changed recently about our services that I think is very important for you all to understand, is the expedited transfer. Up until recently, expedited transfers were only for military victims of sexual assault. The Department of Defense has notified all services that they are to put into policy, and as soon as it is in Air Force policy, we will start this immediately, is that now we will be able to offer expedited transfers for military dependents over the age of 18. We'll be able to offer them expedited transfers. Up until this point, we've had to go through the humanitarian system, and the humanitarian system is a very lengthy process. Right now, all expedited transfers have a report no later than date 90 to 180 days out due to COVID. Typically, the report no later than date is 45 days out. So, COVID has affected a little bit. However, we can ask for an exception to policy waiver to have those expedited transfers move faster, and we have not had any that have been disapproved as of this time frame. We've actually completed 3. A couple of myths I do want to dispel. One of the myths out there is that people report sexual assault just so they can get an expedited transfer. If that was true, I would have done over 60 expedited transfers in the past 3 years. I've done 10 to date. We have 1 in process, so that would make it 11. So in the past 3 years, I've had over 60 sexual assaults reported, and I've done less than a 1/6 of expedited transfers. All right, so that is a myth. Another thing is the first person who gets to the SAPR office gets to make a report of sexual assault. That is also a myth. I have had several cases where both individuals involved in an incident have come in and made a report of sexual assault to my office. I wasn't there. I can't judge what happened, so we will provide the exact same services at the exact same level to both individuals. We let the law enforcement and the judicial process do their jobs. Our job is to support, and that is exactly what we will do. So I want to dispel that myth right off the bat. I am hoping that today's briefing was a little bit more informative. The reason why I do this is because making a report of sexual assault is scary. If you don't know what to expect, it makes it even scarier. So if you understand the process, and either you find out that a friend has been sexually assaulted, or your supervisor, you find out one of your airmen has been sexually assaulted, or let's hope this never happens, you end up being the victim of sexual assault, knowing the process may help you help somebody else, or even you understand, and make it a little bit easier to walk up 3 flights of stairs. We do have an elevator, by the way, but nobody can find it. It's in the back of the building. But to come up and talk to somebody you don't know about the most horrific thing that ever happened. So I hope this briefing has been beneficial. On your feedback sheets, please provide any constructive criticism on how I can make this briefing better for individuals in the future. I want to make things better. I want to provide information you haven't gotten before. I wouldn't say no more SAPR briefings. These are mandated by Congress. I don't know if you guys have noticed, Congress isn't talking to themselves. They're not listening to each other, so I don't think they're going to listen to me when I say no more SAPR briefings. So, with that said, welcome to Mountain Home. Welcome back to those of you who are returning, and I hope you have a wonderful day and stay safe.
Good morning. Welcome to Mountain Home Air Force Base. I'm Elise Mathias, and I am an Inspector General. In fact, I'm the Director of IG Complaints Resolution. The way IG is set up is you have the Wing Inspector General, who is Lieutenant Colonel Bean. You have IGI inspections, and they do the vertical inspections, put you through exercises, things like that. And their director is Lieutenant Colonel Jenkins. And again, I'm over IG complaint resolution. So we encourage use of the chain of command as your primary and preferred method of complaint resolution, because they're right there. They can fix things faster than anybody. But sometimes your chain of command isn't listening. Sometimes your chain of command is the problem. Or maybe the issue that you're having isn't within your unit. That's where we want you to come see us. We want to keep you focused on your mission and not on your problems. Now, everybody has the right to come see the IG or the congressman. Everybody. Active duty, retired, DOD civilians, NAF civilians, civilians who have never even seen somebody in uniform. Everyone has the right to go. No one has the right to stop you. Now, that doesn't mean you get to throw down whatever you're working on and say, I'm out of here, I'm going to see the IG, because your mission does come first. But we'll work you in during your duty day, before your duty day, or even after your normal duty hours. So when someone comes in, what we're going to do is we're going to sit down with you, we're going to do an intake. Now, I know it's kind of scary to walk through the IG doors, so by the time someone comes in, instead of one issue, they may have a laundry list. So we're going to listen to everything that you have to say, probably give you a homework assignment. You know, give us a chronology. Tell me who did what, when, where. If you happen to know what law, policy, regulation, or procedure was violated, let us know that too. Okay, give us a starting point. When we get that information, we will then do a complaint analysis. And that complaint analysis includes reviewing law, policy, regulation, or procedure. We engage with the legal office. We engage with functional experts. We may come out to your unit to look at stuff. When we go out, we carry a badge. Now, this badge authorizes me access to every Air Force documentation and the authority to interview people in accordance with our duties. So, now here's I'm going to step off and get into my little OPSEC rant. When I go out, looking like anyone's mom, and I go into a unit and I'm looking for, I got my badges in my purse. I'm like, hey, I need this. People want to give me stuff. Just give it to me. And then I got to stop and say, do you know who I am? No. Do you know where I work? No. Well, why are you giving me the information? So then we have to have a different conversation. So my recommendation is, I know everyone's new here, but y'all should be recognizing faces, functional badges, things like that. So keep an eye out in your units. If you see somebody poking around and you don't recognize them, challenge them politely, but challenge them. Why are you here? What are you looking for? See if they have the need to be there or the authority to be looking at what they are, and then find somebody who can eject them from your building if you need to. All right, OPSEC rent over. So after I've completed the complaint analysis, at that point, I make an educated determination as the best way to handle it or the appropriate channel to explore it. First, simple assist. Point you in the right direction, make a phone call on your behalf, tell you if you even have a complaint, or work it down, tell you the best way forward. Simple assist. I transfer complaints because I can work on anything that the wing commander controls. So if it's an AFPC issue, a DFAS issue, or something that's internal to a tenant unit, that will be transferred to the IG having jurisdiction. We're all trained the same, so it should be seamless. We dismiss complaints for a variety of reasons. First, if it's frivolous. Hey, IG, they've got lumpy oatmeal at the DFAC. Yeah, okay. We dismiss complaints if there's no violation of a law, policy, regulation, or procedure. You know, hey IG, they've got me working 12-hour days, 2 weeks straight, or whatever's on the horizon. That's illegal. It isn't. But we'll show you by AFI and explain why it's not. We also have the option to dismiss complaints based on time. So right now, our AFI directs that you must bring allegations of wrongdoing to us within 60 days of learning of the wrongdoing. It's different for restriction or reprisal, but right now we're going to talk about your basic complaint, unless there's an overriding Air Force interest. So within 60 days. Now where this becomes a problem more often than not is say you're deployed and you see something funny going on in your deployed location or something strange is happening to you, and you say, you know what, I'm going to file an IG complaint when I get back to Mountain Home. Well, the problem is you've gone home and everyone you've deployed with, they've gone home too. They could be Army, they could be Reserve, they could have vital information, and I can't find it. So my recommendation is, if you have a complaint, find the IG where you're at, or contact us back here at home station and we'll get the ball rolling. We refer complaints to the agency that can best resolve it. You're not getting paid appropriately, we're going to refer that to the FAST commander over finance. Your healthcare provider is not listening to your medical concerns, we're going to refer that to the med group commander. You see some tools walking off the job, showing up on Craigslist. It's going to go to security forces and OSI. And if the issue is something within your squadron, we're going to refer that to your commander. Now, when we do that, we have a referral letter, and we're going to put in what the issues are and the facts that we have already found. We're going to refer it to the commander, and they've got 30 days to look at it. And they could do a commander's inquiry, they could do a commander-directed investigation, and then they owe us a response, a formal response, of which then I would respond to you. We also investigate. First, anything the wing commander tells us to. But primarily, we investigate allegations of reprisal and restriction. Now, if you sorry, remember when I said no one can stop you from going to your IG or your congressman? Well, restriction is where someone either outright says or implies, this better not go out of the office. What's said here stays here. You bring this up, your career is over. Or maybe it's a chilling effect. Maybe you go into a meeting and somebody in your chain goes, dadgummit, I've been working on a stupid IG complaint all weekend. Boy, am I ticked. Whew. Might make you a little nervous about coming in. Restriction is a violation of law. If that happens, I need to know about it. Now, reprisal. Sometimes when someone brings up something wrong with a process or how somebody's acting or something like that, sometimes people might get a little cranky, right? Doesn't happen often. It's less than 1% of our complaints, less than 2% Air Force-wide, but reprisal has a big long term. It's taking or threatening to take an unfavorable personnel action, withholding or threatening to withhold a favorable personnel action against someone who's preparing to go or has gone to make a complaint to their IG. Boil down, you dropped a dime on me, now I'm going to get you. It's a violation of law. Anything like that happens or seems like it's happening, we need to know about it immediately. So people say, okay, hey IG, I don't want to be shot being the messenger. Can I make an anonymous complaint? Absolutely. We take anonymous complaints very seriously. Now, I'm not crazy about being totally honest, anonymous to IG, because if you are totally anonymous, you might not leave enough information for us to look into something. I had a voicemail once that says, hey, I'm from XYZ Squadron. We got some crazy stuff going on here. You need to investigate. Click. I got nothing. If you are anonymous to IG, you'll never know the outcome of your complaint. I don't know who you are. I can't get back to you. And if you are anonymous, sometimes the complaint is so specific, there's only one area or one person that it could have come from. And there could be somebody in there deciding to play Clue and then say it was you in the library with a candlestick. So my recommendation is, why not tell me your name? I'm not going to release it. I'm going to protect it to the max extent that I can by law. But you'll get a response, and if somebody does try to figure out who said something, I got you covered. I got you in the system. So IG is a command investigative function. We don't determine guilt or innocence. Our job is to determine the facts. Adherence to a violation of law, policy, regulation, or procedure. So the answer you get may not be the answer you want to hear, but I can promise you that it will be the most thorough, well-researched, factual answer there is. And if there's wrongdoing, it will be corrected by the appropriate commander. To reach us, send me a letter, an email, fax. Oh, that's broken. Send me a letter, an email, call a hotline. We've got outdated posters all over the wing. Call me direct at 2636, or come on by and visit. I'm located in headquarters, building 512. Come up the center stairwell, take a left down between the bathrooms, down the end of the hall. And that's my time, folks. Thanks for